My daughter-in-law relegated me to the servants' table at her extravagant birthday gala because I arrived late. All because I had stopped on the highway to help a stranded woman fix her car. For that, she humiliated me, seating me far away from my grandchildren while her elite guests received all the attention. Then, to everyone's shock, the woman from the roadside walked in. She was revealed to be a billionaire, and with a single announcement, she turned the evening upside down. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from. The photo trembled in my worn hands. Simon and Grace, captured in last summer's sunlight, their gap-toothed smiles bright against the fading paper. 10 and 8 years old now. When had I last held them? My thumb brushed over Grace's pigtails. 3 months. 3 months since Christmas. 3 months since Mabel's voice on the phone. Sorry, Reuben. The kids caught that stomach bug going around. Then, just days later, Seth's Instagram showed them in Aspen, building snowmen in designer jackets. The leather armchair creaked as I shifted, reaching for the cordless phone on the side table. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, the lipstick mark still clinging to the rim of Martha's favorite mug. I kept using it, pretending she might walk through the door again, asking why I hadn't called the kids yet. It was 7:30 on a Monday evening. Seth would be home from his IT job by now, probably helping with homework, maybe watching cartoons with them. I pictured Grace's laughter. Simon's serious expression when he focused on math problems. My finger hovered over the speed dial, number 2, right after the house phone. Number 1 was still Martha's. I couldn't bring myself to delete it. The phone rang twice. Hello? Seth's voice carried the familiar chaos of family life, the TV chattering in the background, kids bickering about something trivial. Seth. Hi, son. I cleared my throat, sat straighter in the chair as if he could see me. Listen, what should I get Mabel for her birthday? A pause stretched on. In the background, Grace's voice rose. Mom, Simon won't let me. We're not planning anything big. Seth said at last, his voice weary. Just a small dinner. Closest people only. Small dinner. Closest people. The words settled in me like stones. Right. Of course. But maybe something thoughtful. Flowers, maybe? There's that boutique on Clark Street. I'll talk to Mabel about it. Maybe we'll invite you too. Maybe. The word hung in the air, as casual as small talk about the weather. Maybe they'd include me. Maybe I'd see my own grandchildren. The question slipped out before I could stop it. Could I see them? It's been so long since I. Grace, stop bothering your brother. Seth's voice drifted away, then returned. Sorry, Dad. Dinner's ready. Mabel's calling everyone to the table. Of course. I just thought. I really have to go. Thanks for calling about the gift idea. The line went dead. I held the receiver to my ear until the dial tone hummed, then set it gently back on the side table. Through the thin walls, Mrs. Patterson's television blared a game show, winners cheering, the audience applauding. I reached for my small notebook, the same one I once used for work orders back when my hands fixed engines instead of trembling over family photos. I drew a careful line under yesterday's date and wrote in block letters, Mabel birthday Thursday. Below that, small dinner, closest people. On the coffee table, the April calendar showed the 21st circled in red ink. Thursday the 24th was still blank. Waiting. 3 days to figure out how to make myself worth including. The mantelpiece held more photos. Grace missing her first tooth, Simon holding up his Little League trophy. Both kids kneeling in the garden with Martha. Back when Sunday dinners here had meant something. I closed the photo album but kept Simon and Grace's picture tucked between the notebook pages. Tomorrow I'd think about gifts. About gestures that might open a door. Tonight, I'd count the hours until Thursday and wonder if this time would be different. My pen circled the empty square on the calendar. 20 hours later, dirt clung to my fingernails as I crouched between the tomato plants in the backyard. The Tuesday sun warmed my shoulders through the thin flannel shirt. The seedlings needed daily care, something Martha had taught me before the cancer silenced her voice, and everything else. "Looking good, Reuben," Mrs. Patterson called from her kitchen window. I waved back, stretched my stiff spine, and checked the mailbox for the third time that day, still hoping for a spark of inspiration. Maybe a catalog with birthday gift ideas for a 40-year-old businesswoman I barely knew. Nothing. Just bills and supermarket flyers. The cordless phone rang inside. I hurried through the back door, wiping soil from my palms on the dish towel by the sink. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. "Hello, this is Reuben." "Reuben. It's Mabel." Her voice was cool, professional, the same tone she probably used at her environmental consulting firm. No warmth. No small talk. "I'm calling about my birthday this Thursday." I scrambled for my notebook, pen poised. "Yes, Seth mentioned you might," I said. "I'm inviting you to join us. The celebration will be at Lakeview Manor Restaurant, just outside the city. Very exclusive." She paused. I could hear papers shifting in the background. "Thursday evening. 7 o'clock sharp. Lakeview Manor." I wrote it carefully, my handwriting suddenly unsteady. That's wonderful, Mabel. Thank you for including me. Dress appropriately. This isn't some casual diner." The line fell quiet except for the sound of her typing, always multitasking, always with priorities that seemed larger than family. I stared at what I'd written: Lakeview Manor. Elite place. 7 p.m. "Mabel, I need to ask." I hesitated, then forced the words out. "Seth said it would be a small dinner. This sounds much grander." "Plans changed," she replied flatly, her tone signaling the conversation was already over. "It's a full celebration now. Bring a meaningful gift." "Of course." "Will Simon and Grace be there?" "They'll be there. Don't disappoint them by showing up underdressed." The dial tone buzzed in my ear. I sat holding the receiver, processing her words. Meaningful gift. Grand celebration. Elite restaurant. My old computer groaned to life. 5 minutes just to boot, another 3 to connect online. The Lakeview Manor website loaded at last, its homepage glittering with marble columns and crystal chandeliers. Chicago's premier dining experience, the banner proclaimed, where elegance meets excellence. The menu made my stomach sink. Appetizers started at $38. The private dining rooms could seat 50, each overlooking Lake Michigan through sweeping floor-to-ceiling windows. I leaned back in the desk chair Martha had found at a garage sale 15 years ago. Its creak filled the quiet as I stared at my notebook, 2 conversations scribbled across the same page. Small dinner. Closest people. Yesterday's words. Grand celebration. Elite restaurant. Today's. Seth's weary voice. Mabel's commanding one. Through the kitchen window, my neighbor's sprinkler clicked on, sending neat arcs of water over their perfect lawn. I thought about my savings account. About the one decent shirt in my closet. And whether either would be enough for Lakeview Manor. The flower shop on Ashland Avenue might suggest something suitable. Roses, perhaps. Or one of those extravagant arrangements businesswomen liked for their offices. I circled Thursday's date again on the calendar, this time writing, 7 p.m. Lakeview Manor. Then I called the restaurant. The hostess's polished voice explained valet parking, jacket requirements, and private dining rules. After hanging up, I sat with the notebook in my hands, staring at the carefully written address. Evening shadows crept across the living room as Lakeview Manor's name seemed to glow back at me, elegant, expensive, untouchable. I reached for the photo album on the coffee table. It fell open to Grace's school Christmas program, 2 years ago. She had been dressed as an angel, her crooked wings slipping off one shoulder, but her smile was bright enough to light the whole auditorium. I remembered buying a new shirt that morning, rehearsing compliments for her singing voice. Then Mabel's call came. "Sorry, Reuben. Venue change. The family section is already full. You understand, don't you?" I went anyway. Parked across from Lincoln Elementary. Watched through tall windows as my granddaughter sang Silent Night to a room full of parents and grandparents. Everyone but me. Page after page revealed the same story. Simon's baseball game last spring. Weather looks bad, Reuben. Rain would ruin everything. But Seth's Facebook photos later showed sunshine. Simon sliding into home while grandparents cheered in the stands. All but me. The kitchen timer chimed. My soup was ready. I shuffled to the stove and stirred chicken noodle from a can while the radio played songs from the 70s. Martha used to hum along to these tunes while cooking real meals, roasts, casseroles, dishes that filled the house with warmth. Back in my chair, I balanced the bowl on my knee and turned another album page. Last Christmas. The one that hurt most. I'd wrapped the presents weeks ahead. A remote control helicopter for Simon. Art supplies for Grace. Crisp wrapping paper, neat bows, hand-lettered name tags. The kids woke up with fevers, Reuben. You know how the flu spreads. Maybe next week. Those gifts still sat in my closet. The helicopter's batteries likely corroded by now. Grace's watercolor set had likely dried up by now. 3 days later, Seth posted photos from Vail. Both kids looked perfectly healthy, bundled in designer ski gear I couldn't afford with 5 years of social security checks. We lived in the same city, 23 minutes apart by car. I knew, because I'd timed the drive once, passing by their gated subdivision just to glimpse the house where my grandchildren were growing up. Yet I saw them only twice a year, at best, always on Mabel's terms, always when her calendar allowed. The pattern was unmistakable if I stopped pretending otherwise. Invitations rescinded. Plans abruptly changed. Promises of next time that never came. Perhaps she simply didn't want an old man cluttering up their carefully curated lives. I closed the album but slipped Grace's school photo into my notebook. Tomorrow I'd need to find a proper gift, something substantial enough for Lakeview Manor's atmosphere of wealth and polish. The mall would have jewelry counters, perfume displays, boxes wrapped in glossy packaging. The radio played The Way You Look Tonight, and I could almost hear Martha's voice drifting in harmony from the kitchen. She had always known how to manage difficult people, how to bridge divides where I only saw brick walls. This time will be different, I said aloud to the empty chair across from me. She invited me personally. That must mean something. The album landed on the coffee table with a soft thud. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, and Mrs. Patterson's television glowed blue through her curtains. Ordinary families having ordinary evenings, with grandparents included, without conditions, without hesitation. I carried my empty soup bowl to the sink, rinsed it with care, and set it in the drying rack. Then I climbed upstairs to my bedroom, where my one good shirt hung beside work clothes I hadn't needed in years. Tomorrow I would buy flowers and hope. Thursday I would dress properly, praying I wouldn't let down the grandchildren who barely remembered my name. Thursday morning arrived with pale sunlight seeping through the curtains. I had been awake since 5:30, listening to the forecast on my old radio. Clear skies, mild temperatures, perfect driving weather. After toast and coffee, I reviewed the notes I'd scribbled yesterday. Gift ideas: scarf, jewelry, perfume. Martha always said scarves made women feel elegant. I recalled Mabel wearing blue last Easter. Woodfield Mall opened at 10 o'clock, but I arrived early, circling the endless parking lot before finding a spot near the entrance. Families streamed past me, mothers pushing strollers, teenagers laughing, elderly couples strolling arm in arm. Normal people on a normal Thursday afternoon. Inside, the noise hit like a wave, voices bouncing off the high ceilings, children crying, registers beeping. Department stores stretched in every direction, their bright displays promising happiness in exchange for money. I started in Macy's, glancing at handbags that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. The saleswoman eyed me cautiously as I checked price tags, her manicured nails tapping the glass counter. "Can I help you?" Her smile was practiced. "I'm looking for a birthday gift for my daughter-in-law." "What price range?" I hesitated, silently weighing pension checks against the looming restaurant bill. "Something nice, but not too expensive." Her smile faded as she pointed me toward cheaper accessories. I lingered for half an hour over wallets and costume jewelry, but none of it felt right for someone who dined at Lakeview Manor. The boutique upstairs was more promising. Soft lighting, classical music, silk scarves displayed like works of art. A young saleswoman approached, her eyes kind. "This silk scarf is lovely, sir." She held up a pale blue piece, the fabric cascading like water. It would suit any lady beautifully. The price tag made me wince, but I thought of Grace's crooked angel wings, Simon's baseball trophy, unopened Christmas gifts. I hope she'll like it. It's for my daughter-in-law's birthday. Would you like special gift wrapping? Yes. Please make it nice. I watched her fold tissue with practiced grace, tying a ribbon into perfect loops. The finished package looked elegant, professional, nothing like my clumsy Christmas wrapping, still collecting dust in my closet. Back home, I laid my navy suit on the bed, inspecting it for stains. The pants were short at the ankle, the jacket loose across the shoulders, but at least it was pressed and clean. My shoes gleamed after careful polishing. In the mirror, I rehearsed greetings. "Hi, Simon. How's school? Grace, you've grown so tall." The words felt stiff, foreign on my tongue. It had been so long since I'd spoken comfortably to anyone under 30. The gift sat on the table, wrapped in silver paper and tied with a blue bow. Elegant enough for Lakeview Manor. Costly enough to show I cared. Appropriate enough, I hoped, to avoid embarrassment. At 5:45, the clock nudged me to leave. I grabbed my keys, checked the address again, and headed for the garage. Tonight I would see my grandchildren. Tonight might finally be different. The Buick rumbled to life, backing into the fading daylight. Mabel's gift rode on the passenger seat, its silver wrapping glinting under street lamps. 6 o'clock sharp, perfect timing for a 7 o'clock reservation. I-90 stretched ahead, a ribbon of asphalt winding past strip malls and subdivisions into open countryside. The radio played Martha's favorite station, and I hummed along, remembering our wedding dance to Moon River. At a red light, I checked the printed directions again. Lakeview Manor. 23 miles outside the city. Overlooking Lake Michigan. Elite dining. Elegant atmosphere. Substantial gift required. The suburbs dissolved into farmland as traffic thinned. Fields rolled out toward the horizon, dotted with farmhouses whose kitchen windows glowed warmly. Families gathering for supper. Grandparents welcome at every table. At 6:15, I noticed a disabled car up ahead. A woman stood by the open hood, her posture taut with frustration. Dark hair, simple clothing, an air of dignity despite obvious distress. My first instinct was to drive past. I was running late, dressed in my best suit, carrying an expensive gift. But 40 years of fixing engines had trained me to recognize automotive trouble, and my conscience wouldn't let me leave someone stranded. I pulled behind her car, hazard lights blinking, and approached at the careful pace one uses when offering help to a stranger. "Ma'am, do you need some assistance?" She turned, relief washing over her features. "Oh, thank goodness. I don't know what's wrong, it just stopped running." Her voice carried authority and education, despite the faint grease stain on her blouse. The car looked well cared for, a late-model sedan, except for whatever had left her stranded here. "Let's take a look under the hood." The engine compartment told its story immediately. Corroded battery terminals, 0 voltage, alternator belt intact but useless without power. A classic failure pattern I'd seen thousands of times in my workshop. "Looks like your battery's dead," I said. "Probably been weakening for weeks. Finally gave out today." "Can you fix it?" she asked. "I've got jumper cables in the trunk. This shouldn't take long." She watched intently, asking intelligent questions about the repair process. Not the helpless woman stereotype some men expected, but someone genuinely curious about her car's mechanics. "You're very kind to stop," she said. "Most people just drive by." I connected the cables with practiced efficiency, red to positive, black to negative. Years of muscle memory guiding my hands. My wife used to say helping strangers was just good sense. You never know when you might need help yourself. The engine turned over smoothly on the second try. I let it idle while checking voltage levels, making sure the alternator would recharge the battery properly. Professional pride demanded thoroughness, even on roadside repairs. There you go. Should run fine now. How much do I owe you? Her question caught me off guard. Payment hadn't even crossed my mind. This was simply what decent people did for one another. Nothing at all, ma'am. Just drive carefully on these highways. She insisted once more, but I was already packing the cables. 6:30 now. Definitely running late for Lakeview Manor. My grandchildren would be wondering where Grandpa was. Where are you headed tonight? She asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. To my daughter-in-law's birthday party. A flicker crossed her expression, amusement, recognition, I couldn't tell which. Well, I hope you have a wonderful time. Maybe we'll see each other again. Maybe, I said. Drive safely now, she added. Back in my Buick, I watched her tail lights fade around a curve. A nice woman, gracious despite her trouble, well-spoken, the kind Martha would have liked. By 7:05, I pulled into the restaurant parking lot. Late, but not disastrously so. The car purred like a new engine as I coiled the jumper cables neatly. 40 years of automotive repair had taught me to savor the sound of smooth combustion, and now that proper voltage flowed, the car would run perfectly. Test your lights, radio, and air conditioning, I suggested, wiping grease from my hands with the shop rag I always kept in the trunk. Make sure everything's working properly. She went through each system methodically, interior lights, headlights, turn signals, wipers, all functioning perfectly. Perfect. You've saved my evening, she said, stepping out with obvious relief. Now, what do I owe you for the repair? Her insistence surprised me again. Ma'am, nothing at all. This is just what neighbors do for each other. But you're not my neighbor, she said softly. You're a stranger who stopped while dozens of others drove by. I shook my head firmly, closing the hood. Martha always said kindness isn't a business transaction. You do the same for someone else, I'm sure. A knowing smile touched her lips. What did you say you were going tonight? To my daughter-in-law's birthday celebration, Lakeview Manor Restaurant, I replied. I glanced at my watch. 6:45. I really should be heading there soon. A smile tugged at my lips, though I couldn't quite explain why. Lakeview Manor. That's quite an elegant place. Yes, she replied. It's supposed to be very fancy. Elite dining, as my daughter-in-law calls it. I straightened my tie, self-conscious. I hoped my suit would meet their standards. I'm sure you'll fit in perfectly, she said kindly. She started toward her car but paused, hand resting on the door handle. You know, it's funny how life brings people together at just the right moment. How do you mean? Oh, just that sometimes strangers meet for reasons that only become clear later. Her eyes sparkled with amusement. Maybe we'll see each other again sooner than you think. I chuckled politely. Maybe so, but I doubt it. Chicago's a big city. Smaller than you might imagine, she replied, sliding into her car and rolling down the window. Thank you again for your kindness. Have a wonderful evening with your family. Drive carefully, and get that battery checked at a service station soon. I watched her tail lights vanish around the bend before climbing into my Buick. A nice encounter, the kind that restores faith in human decency. Martha would have approved. 6:55 by the dashboard clock. Definitely late now, but only by a few minutes. I pressed the accelerator a little harder, eager to reach Lakeview Manor before my absence became noticeable. Her parting words echoed in my mind, maybe we'll see each other again sooner than you think. Odd to hear from a complete stranger, yet some people were naturally optimistic about coincidences. My thoughts drifted to the evening ahead. Simon and Grace, waiting at an elegant restaurant, probably dressed in their Sunday best. Seth, awkwardly making conversation while Mabel orchestrated every detail of her flawless celebration. Me, arriving with a proper gift and sincere enthusiasm, determined to be the grandfather they deserved. The GPS announced my destination. Half a mile ahead. Warm lights of Lakeview Manor glimmered through the trees, reflecting off the dark lake beyond. Valet parking, just as the hostess had instructed over the phone. I pulled up to the entrance, gifts in hand, ready to give my granddaughter and grandson a birthday celebration their grandmother would have wanted them to remember. The entrance doors gleamed like polished mirrors beneath crystal chandeliers. I checked my reflection in the side mirror one last time, smoothing my navy jacket and gripping Mabel's gift firmly, recalling Martha's advice, walk in like you belong here. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms guided a parade of expensive cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Lexuses, each worth more than my yearly pension. My weathered Buick looked humble in comparison, yet the young man taking my keys offered the same professional courtesy he'd shown the Porsche ahead of me. Inside, live piano music floated through the air, scented with luxurious flowers. White tablecloths, silver cutlery, crystal wine glasses caught the light from overhead fixtures, elegant, refined, perfect. Exactly the elite dining Mabel had promised. Then I noticed the crowd. 50, maybe 60 people mingled across the spacious dining room. Business suits, cocktail dresses, champagne flutes, animated chatter about quarterly projections and market trends. Professional networking in full swing. This was not Seth's small dinner with only the closest family. Mabel stood near the bar, stunning in a black designer dress, gesturing expressively as 3 sharply dressed men hung on her every word. Environmental consulting success story, holding court among potential clients and business partners. I approached slowly, the gift feeling suddenly inadequate in my hands. Sorry I'm late, I said, interrupting her conversation. Had to help someone on the highway with car trouble. Her expression froze. The businessman glanced at me with polite confusion, taking in my modest suit, my working-class appearance, my obvious social difference. Reuben. Her voice was sharp, icy. What a surprise. I offered the wrapped gift, my smile genuine. Happy birthday, Mabel. I hope you like it. She accepted it as if it might soil her manicured fingers, placing it quickly on a nearby side table without a word. The businessmen exchanged subtle glances, reading social cues I was only beginning to understand. Thank you, she said dismissively, turning back to her conversation as though I were already invisible. Gentlemen, as I was saying about sustainable energy initiatives. Mabel, where should I sit? I'd really like to see Simon and Grace. Her eyes flickered calculations behind them, weighing the risk to her professional image against some faint tug of family duty. Oh dear Reuben. What a shame. All the seats at the main table are completely reserved. She gestured toward a small corner, where restaurant staff were taking a break. You'll have to sit over there, with the service team. I followed her pointed finger to a card table in the corner. Mismatched chairs. No tablecloth, no place settings. Waiters and busboys eating their simple meals between duties. That was to be my place. I'm terribly sorry, she said, letting her words hover in the perfumed air. The reservations were finalized weeks ago. We simply didn't plan for. She trailed off, leaving the implications unspoken. The businessmen at the bar glanced awkwardly at their drinks, embarrassed by the domestic tension playing out before them. Nearby guests noticed too, conversations quieting as eyes turned toward the uncomfortable scene. I looked across the room at the main table, where Simon and Grace sat in their finest attire, too far away to approach, too young to understand why Grandpa was isolated in the corner. Understanding hit me like a splash of cold water. This was deliberate. Planned. Calculated. The invitation, the elite venue, the strategic seating, all designed to put me in my place. I nodded slowly, keeping my dignity intact despite the public humiliation. Seth stood at the far end of the bar, expensive whiskey in hand, his designer suit making him look confident and accomplished. Everything I had hoped for my son, good job, fine clothes, financial security, now displayed before me in stark contrast. He saw me and stiffened, guilt flickering across his features like a headline. "Seth," I said quietly, keeping my voice low to avoid a scene. "Son, maybe there's room at your table just for tonight." He couldn't meet my eyes, staring instead at the ice cubes swirling in his glass. Behind him, crystal bottles reflected our awkward standoff in infinite diminishing images. "Dad, listen," he finally said, conflict etched into every line of his face. "We booked all the reservations before deciding to invite you. Mabel had the seating chart finalized weeks ago. I'm sitting with the kitchen staff, Seth, at a card table in the corner. It's not that bad, your children are 50 feet away, and I can't even approach them." My voice stayed calm, but each word landed like a stone. "This is your wife's birthday party, and she's treating their grandfather like hired help." Seth's face flushed, not with anger, but with embarrassment, shame, and the uncomfortable awareness that he was complicit in something fundamentally wrong. "Maybe I could ask Mabel to rearrange," he said hesitantly. "Would you?" I asked quietly. "Would you actually ask your wife to treat your father with basic dignity?" Silence stretched between us. Piano music floated through the air. Glasses clinked at nearby tables. Conversations flowed like water around stones. "She's worked really hard on this party, Dad. All her business contacts are here. She's stressed about making good impressions." "I understand," he said. Two words that carried 42 years of disappointment. Two words that spoke volumes about our relationship, his priorities, his choice between family and social climbing. Seth's relief was palpable. He had expected an argument, demands, or emotional manipulation. Instead, I gave him exactly what he wanted: permission to abandon his father without consequence. "It's just for tonight," he muttered weakly. "Maybe next time we can." "Next time," I repeated, nodding. "Sure, son. Next time." Behind me, Seth mumbled something about understanding, about difficult situations, about hoping I'd enjoy the dinner anyway, words meant to soothe his conscience, not address the deeper problem. I walked slowly toward the corner table, past elegant guests discussing stock portfolios and vacation homes, past Mabel holding court among potential clients, past the main table where Simon and Grace sat in their Sunday best, watching their grandfather's humiliation with confused, sad eyes. The staff table felt like exile. Waiters nodded sympathetically as I sat down, understanding working-class solidarity in ways my own family had forgotten. They offered coffee, asked if I needed anything, treated me with more courtesy than the people who shared my blood. From this corner, I could observe the entire gathering. Count the guests, 57 by my estimate. Watch Mabel network with environmental industry leaders. See Seth hover near the bar, avoiding eye contact. Most painfully, I could see my grandchildren glancing my way, held back by etiquette, unable to approach the grandfather relegated to the corner with restaurant staff. The staff table became my observation post, overlooking the social battlefield. 57 guests, all in designer attire, all part of Mabel's environmental consulting world, while I, their grandfather, remained unseen and unheard. "Sorry you ended up here, sir." A young waiter slid into the chair across from me, sandwich and coffee in hand. "Doesn't seem right," he said quietly. "Family treating family like this." "Not your fault, son," I replied. He shook his head, eyes flicking toward the main celebration. "I've been working these fancy parties for 3 years. Never seen anything like this before." Neither had I. But the patterns were becoming clear. Systematic exclusion disguised as social necessity. Seth's small family dinner had been transformed into Mabel's professional networking showcase with military precision. I counted backward through memories: Christmas morning cancellations, school play venue changes, baseball game weather warnings, Easter dinner flu excuses. Every excuse designed to separate me from Simon and Grace while maintaining plausible deniability. The math was simple. 57 business guests at the main table. And their grandfather earned a card table with the restaurant staff. My phone buzzed. Probably Seth, sending another digital apology to soothe his conscience. But the number was unfamiliar. Is everything all right at the restaurant? I hope your evening improved after our highway encounter. The woman from the roadside. Somehow she had my number, probably from the insurance paperwork during the repair. A kind gesture from a stranger who had shown more concern for my well-being than my own family had in years. I typed back carefully. Interesting evening. Thank you for asking. Her reply arrived instantly. Sometimes the most interesting evenings lead to unexpected opportunities. An odd response. But then, nothing about tonight followed normal family logic. Across the room, Grace caught my eye and waved shyly. Mabel's hand immediately descended on her shoulder, redirecting attention back to the adult conversation at the main table. Simon followed his sister's gaze, seeing me sitting with restaurant staff, confusion wrinkling his young face. They wanted to approach. To sit with Grandpa, hear stories, show me school projects, maybe get quarters for the restaurant's vintage arcade games I'd noticed near the entrance. But social hierarchy held them captive at the main table, while I sat in exile, close enough to see, far enough to understand my place in this family's structure. 57 guests, I murmured to myself. Small family dinner. The waiter looked up. What's that, sir? Just thinking out loud, I said. About truth and lies, and the difference between them. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the mysterious E. The evening isn't over yet. Sometimes the best surprises come last. I stared at the text, marveling at how a total stranger could sound so confident about events in my life. But nothing about tonight followed predictable patterns. Then the restaurant doors swung open. A new arrival entered, elegant and commanding attention immediately from the maitre d' and valet staff. I squinted through dim lighting to take in the latest guest at Mabel's networking extravaganza. The double doors opened like theater curtains, revealing the evening's final act. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Silverware froze halfway to mouths. Champagne glasses paused in elegant hands as everyone turned toward the entrance. She walked in like she owned the building. Deep emerald designer dress. Diamond earrings catching the chandelier light. A confident stride that spoke of boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. 2 professional security guards flanked her, scanning the room with practiced vigilance while maintaining respectful distance. My coffee cup rattled against its saucer. Recognition hit me. The woman from the highway, the stranded motorist whose battery I jump-started less than 2 hours ago. But this was her true self revealed. Gone were the simple clothes and helpless demeanor. In their place stood someone who commanded respect without demanding it, whose presence shifted the energy of the entire room. "Who is that?" whispered nearby guests. "Must be someone important," came the hushed replies. Across the room, Mabel's face went pale, then red, then froze into a practiced, strained smile, the kind used for tense business negotiations. She abandoned her conversation partners and hurried to the entrance with obvious urgency. "Miss Howard! What an unexpected pleasure!" Mabel called, her voice higher than usual, tinged with nervous energy. Howard. The name meant nothing to me, but it clearly meant everything to everyone else in the room. Ms. Howard smiled politely, but distantly, professional courtesy without warmth. The kind of interaction reserved for business associates, not friends. "Good evening, Mabel. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by." Her eyes swept the room, taking in the decorations, expensive wine, and hushed networking conversations. Then her gaze found me at the staff table. Her smile became genuine for the first time since entering. "I told you we might see each other again," she said, her words directed at me, despite Mabel's attempts to monopolize her attention. Guests followed her line of sight, suddenly noticing the old man seated with restaurant workers, struggling to understand why this obviously important woman was acknowledging someone at the service table. Mabel's confusion was evident. Her eyes darted between Ms. Howard and me, trying to compute a connection that made no sense in her social hierarchy. "I believe we have business to discuss," Ms. Howard told Mabel, though her feet were already moving toward me. The crowd parted like water, clearing a path from the entrance to the corner table. Professional deference guided their movements. Whoever this woman was, she commanded respect from people not easily impressed. Mabel trailed behind, breathless. Her carefully orchestrated networking event had transformed into something she could neither control nor predict. The meticulous seating chart, the strategically curated guest list, the carefully calculated social dynamics. All disrupted by an arrival that had rewritten every equation in the room. Ms. Howard approached my table with purposeful steps, her security detail maintaining professional distance, while the entire restaurant watched this unprecedented breach of social hierarchy. "Mind if I sit?" She gestured toward the empty chair beside me, completely ignoring the invisible boundary between staff table and main celebration that had defined my evening. The young waiter scrambled to his feet, offering his chair with obvious awe. "Please, ma'am, take mine. That's very kind." "Thank you." She settled gracefully, designer dress somehow fitting perfectly next to the simple metal chair, far more natural than the formal tables around us. Mabel finally arrived, breathless, her networking smile stretched tight across her face. "Ms. Howard, surely you'd prefer the main table? I can arrange." "Actually, Miss," Howard said, her voice carrying a calm authority that brooked no interruption, "I'm curious about the seating arrangements here. Why is Mr. Gray sitting with the restaurant staff?" The question hung in the air like silk wrapped around steel. Guests at nearby tables leaned closer, sensing drama far more interesting than quarterly profit discussions. "Well, you see," Mabel's laugh sounded forced, brittle. "It's a family matter. Space limitations, last-minute reservations." "Family matter?" Ms. Howard repeated, turning her gaze toward me with genuine interest. "You're related to tonight's hostess?" "She's my daughter-in-law," I said quietly. "It's her 40th birthday celebration, and I'm celebrating it at the staff table." The simple statement cut through all of Mabel's careful explanations like a knife through silk. No amount of social maneuvering could disguise the fundamental wrongness of the situation when stated so directly. "The main table was booked weeks ago," Mabel said desperately. "Family seating was finalized before we decided to invite additional guests." Ms. Howard's eyebrows rose slightly. "Additional guests?" "Yes," Mabel admitted, her voice tight. "Extended family members weren't originally included in the intimate celebration plans." "I see." Two words that carried a world of judgment, a quiet assessment of character and moral compass. Ms. Howard's expression cooled as she processed Mabel's explanation. Around us, the restaurant buzzed with whispered conversations. Guests tried to understand why this obviously powerful woman was publicly questioning family seating arrangements. "Tell me about your grandchildren," Ms. Howard said, turning back to me. "I assume they're here tonight." I nodded toward the main table where Simon and Grace sat in their Sunday best, stealing glances at us but restrained by invisible social barriers. "They look lovely. When did you last spend time with them?" The question sounded casual, conversational, but the calculation behind her eyes was clear. This was an investigation disguised as small talk. "Christmas, briefly before that Easter," I said. "There always seem to be scheduling conflicts or health concerns when family gatherings are planned." "An unfortunate pattern," she observed, watching Mabel's face grow increasingly pale. Seth approached from the bar, drink in hand, clearly dispatched by his wife to manage whatever crisis was unfolding. "Dad, everything okay here?" "Your father was just explaining family dynamics," Ms. Howard said before I could respond. Interesting perspective on hospitality and respect for elders. Seth's face flushed red. He understood that his family's treatment of me was being evaluated by someone whose opinion clearly carried weight in his wife's business world. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," Mabel suggested, desperation creeping into her voice. "Miss." Howard stood slowly, her presence commanding attention from the entire restaurant. "Actually," she said, her voice calm but unmistakably authoritative, "I think it's time for a proper introduction." She moved toward the center of the dining hall, and conversations faltered as every guest turned their attention to her approaching presence. Ms. Howard lifted her champagne glass, and the room fell utterly silent. 57 guests, restaurant staff, family members, every eye was fixed on the elegant woman who had transformed what had begun as a networking dinner into something far more consequential. "Good evening, everyone. Allow me to properly introduce myself." Her voice carried effortlessly, clear and authoritative, across the dining hall. "My name is Esther Howard. I am the founder and CEO of Howard Green Energy Corporation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Business cards went forgotten. Networking chatter died mid-sentence as guests realized they were in the presence of genuine power. Howard Green Energy, the multi-billion-dollar environmental company whose contracts could make, or break, smaller consulting firms with a single decision. Mabel's face strained of color. "I am also the principal director of the Howard Foundation, which manages charitable assets exceeding $2 billion annually." Esther's smile was calm, professional, and utterly intimidating. "Our foundation supports organizations and individuals who demonstrate exceptional character and human dignity." She paused, letting the words settle like frost over the assembled diners. "Tonight, I had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Reuben Gray on the highway outside Chicago. My car had broken down, and this gentleman stopped to help a complete stranger, refusing any payment for his assistance." Her gaze softened as it swept across the room, landing on me with genuine warmth before returning to the crowd. "He told me he was attending his daughter-in-law's birthday celebration at this very restaurant. Imagine my surprise when I discovered that the same man, who showed such kindness to a stranger in distress, was seated at a corner table with restaurant staff, separated from his own grandchildren at what was supposed to be a family celebration." Mabel swayed slightly, gripping a nearby chair for support. "In my experience," Esther continued, "character matters far more than profit margins. How people treat others when they believe no one important is watching reveals their true nature. Sadly, what I've witnessed tonight regarding Mr. Gray demonstrates a fundamental lack of the values my foundation upholds." Guests exchanged glances, understanding in an instant that careers and reputations were being assessed in real time. "Therefore," Esther announced, her tone measured, "Howard Green Energy will not be pursuing any business relationships with Gray Environmental Consulting. Character and human decency are non-negotiable in our partnerships." Mabel's networking empire crumbled in a single sentence. 2 years of business development, dozens of potential contracts, millions in projected revenue, all evaporated because she failed to show basic respect to an elderly family member. However, Esther's voice softened, her smile now warm. "I am delighted to announce that Mr. Reuben Gray has accepted my invitation to join the Howard Foundation's board of directors. His integrity, natural dignity, and unwavering character make him precisely the type of person we need to guide our charitable initiatives." The restaurant buzzed with murmurs of astonishment. Seth's whiskey glass slipped from his hand, crystal shattering against the floor, punctuating the moment of complete reversal. From my corner table, I watched my granddaughter's puzzled smile, my grandson's wide-eyed astonishment, and my son's expression shifting through shame, disbelief, and the recognition of catastrophic error. Esther Howard raised her glass one final time. "To Mr. Gray, proof that kindness to strangers creates the most unexpected opportunities, and that dignity always finds its proper reward." Justice had been served, elegant, absolute, and complete. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. To listen to the next story, click on the box to your left. Thank you for watching.